Hello, everybody, and thank you all so much for tuning in to another edition of the PHNX Hockey Podcast, coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Head to any Circle K Arizona location where you can get any size Polar Pop or Froster for just 79 cents now through September 3rd. And who doesn't need that right now? As always, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. I'm Leah here with Petey. We got Danielle behind the Mac. How you doing?
I'm fine. That's fine. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. It's hot. And
It
a
is
Froster.
hot.
I didn't know 79 cents for a Froster. That's a hell of a deal.
Listen, it's toasty out there. Like you walk outside for 1 second, you're
It's
dying.
Hot. It's hot.
Like I go outside to water my plants, I'm sweating.
But don't you tell people that are like in the Midwest right now or parts elsewhere that it's still fine? Oh, it's just a dry heat. We're fine.
Well, honestly,
Like I do.
like some places in the East, it's over 90 and humid.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd actually rather have 105 and dry. Although it's been a little humid here. It's
I'm with
monsoon
that.
season.
Look at
So.
CWP and his what do you call those things? Beanie?
Beanie.
I don't know. Like we call
We
them
don't wear
hats.
those here because it's
a
it's
beanie.
hot.
We called it a toque.
A toque.
And we did
That's
it
a
on
Canadian
purpose
thing.
because it was cold. I don't think CWP is cold.
Well, maybe that picture is
I think
from
it's more about fashion.
earlier. This
Drip.
year.
CWP's drip.
Well, Petey's on one today.
I am on one today.
Oh boy. All right.
Let's go.
Well, we'll dive right in. It's PHNX Ranks Week. If you don't know what that is, every year we choose 1 week out of the year where we rank something.
Rank stuff.
Yeah, we've
Stuff.
ranked the best Arizona
People,
athletes.
players, athletes. We did that.
We did that. And this year the theme is ranking the best games in Arizona sports history.
Games.
So if you follow PHNX Sports on Twitter or Instagram, you probably see all of the rankings so far. We're revealing 5 a day. The first 15 are out. The next 5 drop later today, and then you'll find out the top games
5
on tomorrow or Friday.
So
I don't know what day it is.
I'm
to be
guessing
honest.
just because I know a lot about hockey in the Valley, I'm guessing we're not going to crack the top 5 because we got Super Bowls in there, you've got World Series games in there, you got NBA Final games in there. I'm guessing you probably won't see.
Yeah,
hockey.
unfortunately,
Probably won't see hockey.
for many people who watch the show, who are Coyotes fans, you know that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Coyotes and the history
Yes.
here, there's not a lot of good.
No.
As demonstrated by what all unfolded. And by the way, I said there's 15 out. There'll be 15 out later today. I didn't even know it was Wednesday. I thought it was Thursday in my head.
It's just fine.
I'm a little off today.
That's
It's
okay.
fine. That's my clearing. The first drop of the 5 games.
Yes.
There were 2 Coyotes games.
Seriously.
In there.
2 of them.
You had coming in at 25, the first Coyotes game in history.
First Coyote game in history.
Which
1996.
it was the first game, the first win. Chris King scored the first goal, and Shane Doan scored his first goal as a Coyote. So I think it's only fair that game cracks the top.
I think that should be in the top.
Yeah,
I didn't see it. Wasn't there. Didn't work there yet.
I was
literally didn't know the team existed then.
I was
probably.
6 months old.
Yeah, so you didn't know either. So great, good game.
Woo! Not much to say on that one.
No.
And coming in at 23 was the first whiteout game at America West Arena versus the Anaheim Mighty Ducks.
Mighty Ducks back then.
4-1 win.
Paul Correa.
Were you there for that?
Nope. Didn't work there till the following year. Another game I didn't see. So
That's a bummer.
So the two best games as of right now in the top 15 are 2 games I didn't see.
Well,
and I saw a lot of them.
I didn't see them either.
I think I saw every single Coyote game from 1997 through 2020, and I haven't talked about them yet. Like they're not there. They're not in the top 15, and I'm guessing they're not going to be in the final 5. So the chances of them being in the top 10, just because I know how things work here at PHNX, because everybody else gets 2 votes, we get 1. So there's
to be fair, we
games.
don't even the team isn't even here anymore.
So that's fair.
Yeah.
So lucky to get 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
We're feeling good about our 2, but
Cool.
it felt like it felt like we couldn't just let these two be the only ones discussed.
No.
We wanted to come here on today's show in this hockey space with hockey fans watching and listening. We want to take a trip down memory lane because despite the troubled history, which we have talked about time and time again on the show, we can spend hours and hours and hours talking about the curses, all the bad decisions, every bad thing that has happened, including the team leaving. We're not going to talk about that today. We're actually going to take a trip down memory lane, get a little nostalgic, and we're going to talk about some of the best moments in Arizona hockey history, whether that's Coyotes, ASU, or something else. So, I mean, it's going to primarily be Coyotes just because they've been around.
There might be an ASU one sneak in there.
There might be, so you'll have to stick around. We want you also in the chat to give us your favorite Arizona hockey games in history.
Paul's
so let
got
us
one
know.
right off the top.
Paul said 2010 West quarterfinals game 1 has to be on the list. So let's
Chicago game 1.
Chat. Yeah.
What a game.
Yeah,
I think for some of these games though, and we reached out to a lot of people to get their input because we couldn't just do it ourselves, and so we got Craig actually reached out. But a lot of things were moments, like the Chris Colanos, if you remember him, the Patrick Roy, where he beats him on a penalty shot and Patrick Roy goes nuts. That's a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The game itself, meh. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal as the entirety of a game. So when I looked at my list, I tried to do it more as the entirety of a game, not just a singular event within that game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So and when I look at my list, I think it's more about important wins in this franchise history or important moments. And we might talk about Shane Doan a couple of times in this, and maybe even his son. Well, but I think that's when I looked at this overall list, I think it was more about the totality of a game.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could do this. And I think that if you polled our whole staff, people would have a different reasoning behind, you're looking at the totality of the game. I also think you can look at the game and the impact that it had on the city, on potentially even culture. You can look at, sometimes a great moment makes a game great. If you're only remembering that moment, then that had to be a great game.
That's true.
Not necessarily, because sometimes there's great moments in bad games, but when you kind of package it all together, I think you can make it great. So whatever the criteria you think, that's why we want to hear from you. But Petey, you've been around.
Did Craig publish a list?
Did Craig publish a list?
Yeah.
No.
Oh. I thought he might have.
No.
Because he writes shit that I don't read. So I thought maybe he wrote a list.
Well, the current list is up now. Go PHNX.com.
About the Coyotes?
No, the 25 in Arizona.
Well, we know that. We just said that there's only 2 hockey ones.
This show is the only place we're talking about hockey.
So this is on us.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, well, somebody should have told me that's what this show was about. No, I'm kidding. I do got that point, but I didn't know if Craig published a list.
No.
Because I've seen a top 10 list. So that's the list we're going with.
Because
I have thoughts.
You and I get to do whatever we want. This is our show. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
No, I've got it. I've got top 7.
Okay, well, we don't have to go in your order. What are some games that stand out?
I'm going to go with one that's kind of a sad moment. And I just got done saying we're not going to do about a singular moment. It was one of the things we reached out to was where Jeremy Roenick came back from a broken jaw against the Dallas Stars. He broke his jaw against Darian Hatcher. Dirty hit. 1 game left in the season. Literally meant nothing to either team. Darian Hatcher takes Jeremy Roenick into just a horrific hit into the boards, breaks his jaw as the Coyotes are going to enter the playoffs the following week against the St. Louis Blues. Coyotes go up 3-1. St. Louis wins the next 2. They win next. It's 3-3 coming home. America West, Game 7. All the excitement. Jeremy Roenick miraculously comes out wearing just a horrific looking helmet thing that Stan made the night before. So the moment of Jeremy Roenick coming back, some people say is part of it. I go to the game itself. It's Game 7 in the first round of the Stanley Cup Finals, and the goaltender on the other end of the ice was Grant Fuhr for the St. Louis Blues. And Grant Fuhr, this is towards the twilight of his career, he was lights out. And Nikolai Khabibulin was playing for the Coyotes at the time. And we're talking 1999 playoffs, Game 7, 0-0 overtime.
Oh, my God.
You talk about stress. And I remember I was in the coach's room and we had literally had my suitcase packed by my desk. If the Coyotes win that game, we go right from there to the airport to go to Dallas, like right there. And we were extremely confident. Like it was 3-1. Jim Schoenfeld was the head coach. He put his job on the line. He said, I guarantee we win this series. I'll bet my job on it. He was not the head coach the following year. Lost that game 1-0. Unbelievable hockey game. It's one of the best games I've ever seen for the intensity. We talk about overtime, 0-0 in a Stanley Cup playoff game. Unfortunately, when you look back at history, it's one of the games that the Coyotes lost.
Wow.
There you go.
That's a good story. See, again, that's before my time. I kind of bring a little bit of a different point of view because my era is a little bit the later half of Coyotes history. But there's
some of those that fall in.
And it's interesting. You talk about, like, for example, one of the nights that stands out, Shane Doan's jersey retirement. Yeah. That, like, Shane Doan didn't play in that game. That had nothing to do with the game itself. But what that game meant a lot. It was February 24th, 2019, and against Winnipeg. His original team. Yep. Coyotes win 4-1 on a magical night, winning for the captain Coyote.
It was
That's
cool.
One where it's not even about the game itself, but what the win and the whole package all together.
And what it meant to this franchise.
Yeah.
And what Shane Doan meant to the franchise. I agree. That's an important, a game itself is almost secondary. It's one of those things that they're glad they won. And I was glad it was against the Winnipeg Jets. And I will say this to the Winnipeg Jet coaching staff at the time. That whole team sat out on the ice in chairs for the entire ceremony, which was quite long. But that showed a lot of respect to a good player. And again, another great night here in Arizona Coyote hockey history.
What else you got, Petey?
Well, coming into my number 6, but we're going to give our top 10, though, because we did cumulatively. Mm-hmm. Is that a word? As a group.
Cumulatively?
Yeah, that's the word. But we came up with a list, and we'll give that list at some point. Yeah. So we probably have graphics made for that list.
Well, we're going to go. We're making the list.
So my number 6, and I know Caleb was listening earlier. Caleb was a part of this. And Drew was part of this. CWP was a part of it. CWP was at that one. Let's go to April 30th, 2022.
Yes.
The final game in Gila River Arena. We had a meet. Was it a meetup?
It was a takeover.
So we had tickets to the game. And unfortunately, Drew Gibbs bought me a few drinks before. Sorry, Drew. Yeah. But
you were doing Petey's puck talks on the bus over. Remember?
Yeah.
That was a blast.
It was off the rails, though. So the game starts, and the Coyotes are down 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in. Yeah. And we're like, oh, great. We've got the whole diehard crew out here. This game sucks. Way to go, Coyotes. And then they came back. And they stormed back for a win, a 5-4 win in their last game at Gila River. Unbelievable comeback.
One of the best hockey games I've ever been to.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Like, the crowd was so into it. They understood that they screwed their draft pick again. Typical Yotes. But unbelievable hockey game against the Nashville Predators. And that ranks in there. And we got to spend it with a lot of our favorite people as diehards. Yeah. And it was a lot of fun that night. I had a great time. And again, I probably had a couple too many.
Oh, man. Another one that stands out, Shane Doan, first hat trick.
Oh, yeah.
You look at Shane Doan, like, for all the accomplishments that he had and all the records and all of this, it took him a really long time to score his first hat trick, Petey.
Yeah, he did it in, it was 2012.
January 7th, 2012. Shane Doan records his first career hat trick versus the New York Islanders.
And the goaltender, I am pretty sure, and CWP will keep me honest on this one, I think it's Yevgeny Nabokov, former standout with the San Jose Sharks. He had moved his career there and scored on the last second. And if you remember the game, had 2 goals. And Shane Doan had 2 goals a lot in his career. And he was always the guy that could never get that. He had the longest streak of consecutive games played without getting a hat trick in the NHL. Like he never scored. He couldn't get it. He couldn't get over that hump. And that game, it's the very end of the game, and it's a 2-on-1, and it's Ray Whitney and Shane Doan on a 2-on-1. Whitney feeds him, and he's like, shoot. Puck goes in, goes nuts, and there's like everybody's looking at the clock. Did it go in time? Like the clock had buzzed. It buzzed. Puck went in, buzzer. And we're like, oh shit, did he not get the hat trick? So we thought for sure. The review took minutes. And so people had left the building. And so a lot of people didn't get the opportunity to actually throw the hats onto the
man.
ice for Shane Doan's actual hat trick. So the next game, during warmups, a whole bunch of people threw hats on during warmups.
Cool.
It was really a classy, touching moment. But again, it's one of those things that it's an important moment for a person that became an important moment for the franchise because of what he meant to this franchise. A great moment in 2012.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one that really, really stands out.
Throw out another one because I kind of jammed on top of yours.
No, it's all. Well, you were there for
I was
all
there
of these
for that.
For the most
for a lot
part.
of these ones, I was. The ones on my list, I definitely was there because if I wasn't there, I didn't really think it was an important game.
Well, let's stick in 2012 because I think that's when you're a Coyotes fan, that's a year that sticks out.
Thanks, JWP.
In memory.
Yes. A lot of great ones in 2012.
Yeah, a lot of really good ones. And let's start in April of that year. Blackhawks series. That was one I think that stood out to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, if you look at the entirety of that series, and it's one of those things, and again, we go back to the first year of the Coyotes in 96, 97, where they can't get over and beat the Anaheim Ducks. Again, it's a team where they had home ice. Arizona has home ice, or Phoenix at the time. Favored to win that series, they don't. St. Louis, they don't. They had multiple chances. That Detroit, they were a higher seed, although Detroit had Zetterberg and Datsuk, and they were phenomenal. They took that to 7 games. But in the history of this franchise, never got through the first round. And it became such an albatross around the neck of this team that you just can't get there, can't get past the first round. And it became like an almost self-fulfilling prophecy that couldn't get there. And then you draw the
like
Chicago
the
Blackhawks.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly like these. Then you draw the Blackhawks. And this is still when the Blackhawks were winning cups. And they were extremely good. They finished lower in the standings because they had some injuries during the regular season. And they had some issues during the regular season. So they didn't. The Coyotes finished higher in the standings. The Coyotes are home ice. And I tell you what, if you go back in the history of the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, and I don't know if this is still a record. We need somebody on Google right now.
Or Charles. I have faith.
Or Charles. The first 5 games of the series went to overtime. And when you talk about anxiety, like once is enough. Like once in the Stanley Cup final or Stanley Cup playoffs, you go to overtime. 5 consecutive games. It didn't matter if someone was ahead, who was behind it. It was just absolute chaos going to overtime, all of those goals. And it became one of the things that was a legacy to Michael Bodker's career is he scored 2 of those overtime winning goals. One of them we didn't even know went in because it was in Chicago and you couldn't tell if it went in. It was kind of like the Patrick Kane goal that won the cup and you couldn't tell if it went in. That series was phenomenal. Like phenomenal. Mike Smith, best goaltending I've ever seen as a Coyote in that series. So any of those games in 2012 are just memorable. As we get to our list, I'm sure we're going to see those. But that if you get a chance, go back on Google and Google Coyotes 2012 series against Chicago, and they're on. Every goal of the whole playoffs is on there. Chills. If you're a Coyote fan and you need some positive news in your life, that's it, because it is amazing what they did against Kane and Taves and Sharp. It was an amazing time for this franchise. And when you need to brighten your day, well, take a little trip down memory lane.
Yeah, this feels good to me because
it does. We're talking hockey.
Yeah, we're talking hockey, and also like again, like I said, there's just been so much bad, so it's nice to reflect on some of the good. And it feels very appropriate that I'm wearing my Coyotes Forever shirt today. I actually did this on purpose because, you know, it's like gone but not
you
forgotten.
Thought that through.
Yeah.
I did.
You can buy this right now. Go PHNXlocker.com, 20% off if you're a diehard. Free if you sign up to become a diehard today. But I love this shirt and it feels very appropriate for today's discussion. A couple other honorable mentions from 2012. The day that they clinched the playoffs, Mike Smith made 54 saves on April 3rd, 2012 to defeat the Blue Jackets 2-0 and secure a playoff spot for the Coyotes. Amazing. And that came off after that magical run in February where they went undefeated.
11-0-1.
Yeah, almost
did not
undefeated.
Lose a game in February. And it's a team that was thinking about being sellers at the trade deadline. Yeah. Like literally going to be sellers at the trade deadline. Light it up. And as we went up, we embarked the plane and we flew. The first city was St. Louis. And we flew to St. Louis and we were out of the playoffs. We were out of the playoffs at that time. Incredibly tight race in the Pacific Division. Not only were we not in the playoffs when we got on the plane, by the time we came home from Minnesota, which was the last game on that trip, we swept the trip. We needed to get one to get in the playoffs. Won all 3, won the Pacific Division. So we went from not being in the playoffs to winning the Pacific Division, and the last team in on the last night of the year, LA Kings. And they end up winning the Stanley Cup. So those last 3 games were so important for this franchise to get into the playoffs. And that it started with a game in St. Louis and games that we thought we weren't convinced they were winnable. And I remember we went out to dinner that night before that game, and we were sitting there with it was Dave Tippett's staff, and we were sitting there with a pen and a piece of paper in the standings, and we're going, okay, who has to play? Who has to do what? Has to win this? And we're like, we got to win one. We got to win one, and we end up getting all 3. So it was really fun.
That's awesome. Well, there's still plenty of games to go over. I feel warm inside right now.
Yeah, it's exciting to talk about happy things.
Yeah, it really is. Here's a happy thing. Circle K, the Inner Circle. Okay, so when you sign up for the Inner Circle, you save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. Then you save 3 cents after that.
Every gallon after
and then you hit a point where you start saving 5 cents per gallon.
Is that true?
Yeah. And I think it's after 10 fill-ups or something with the 3 cents. I went and got gas at Circle K the other day. 5 cents per gallon
I'm going
saved.
home today and doing it. It's on the way because I'm almost there.
I will go.
I never.
The thing is, I never have to go out of my way to go to Circle K because they're everywhere. How good do those Frosters and Polar Pops look?
I know. I'm looking at a Frost right now. I'm going
to
to go get gas on the way home.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a Froster.
Inner Circle, so many perks. You also get like the discounts on drinks, food, on gas. Save money. Save money at Circle K by being a member of the Inner Circle, and it's completely free to join. You also get to use the Circle K app, which is a great user interface. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. And with all the money you save by being a member of the Inner Circle, you can open a checking account at Desert Financial Credit Union. Put that money in there. Get your $200 that you get when you open a free checking account online, which who couldn't use? Like, if someone said, you want $200 right now, you'd say, yeah. Well, that's what we're saying to you right now. Want $200? Desert Financial Credit Union. And not only that, I really like that they call it's like the members. It feels very community oriented. I think they helped Derek get a mortgage for his house, like whatever you need, whether it's just checking or savings, loans, retirements. Yep. Yeah, they got you. And they've been around for more than 84 years, taking care of the community, including the one and only Craig Morgan. So you know that it can be trusted. Like I said, when you open a free checking account online, get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200.
Yeah, and I as we go look back at the 2012 playoffs, and I did not know this, I thought we could blame it on goaltending or the increased performances by the LA Kings, how well they were in the playoffs. It's James Beckerleg's fault.
He said, I had playoff tickets for the entire playoffs. Every time Mom attended a game with me, the Coyotes would lose. And when my dad went with me, the Coyotes would win.
So it's James's mom's fault. I didn't know until I solved the big mystery today. Thanks, James, for solving the mystery of the Coyotes playoff woes in 2012.
All right. Well, we'll keep some of the best ones.
Because some of these on our honorable mention list, and they may be in our final list.
Yeah. You never know.
I have a hard time with ones that I didn't see. And March 20th, 1997, Keith Tkachuk scores 4 goals in a big 4-2 win over a Chicago Blackhawks team. Didn't see it. Wasn't there.
What about April 6th, 97?
Nope.
Keith Tkachuk scores his 50th goal of the season in a 2-1 loss.
Again,
didn't see it. I was 1 year old.
Didn't see it. Was I? You know where I was then? I don't remember, but it was not
Idaho.
Here. I think I was probably living in Minnesota at the time. In Minnesota, and we weren't following Phoenix Coyote hockey all that close because we had, we were still North Stars and we had just lost that team.
Yeah.
So we were kind of out of the NHL.
Here's one you saw. What? October 19th, 2013. Mike Smith scores his first ever goal as a goalie.
Yeah.
Against Detroit.
I remember the goal, and everybody, Mike Smith, and it's funny because when you watch goaltenders now in the National Hockey League, there aren't many that are good puck handlers. And there was an era there from Marty Turco. And it started with Martin Brodeur. And I think he was good. And people said he's the best puck handler. No, he's not. You're out of your mind. Like, he was good. He was the best at the time. But then from him begat Marty Turco. Marty Turco's like, this dude's good. That became Mike Smith. Mike Smith, buddy, teams planned their entire forecheck around Mike Smith puck handling. We, as a team, and this is no bullshit, we planned one season on our breakouts all based around Mike Smith. And that Dave Tippett, we had written it up because he was he was phenomenal. Like, he was so good. He changed the way the goalies held their stick because he flipped his glove up this way. Nobody did that. It was always like this. Goalies started doing it like this. You saw little kids at the rink doing that. And then everybody stopped. These Russian guys can stop it, but they can't shoot it. So we'll get goalies today. Start working on your shot because I want more of that. Mike Smith, he could shoot better than a lot of the players on the team. He could pass better, certainly. Like one time he carried the puck from the net, and it was a pulled goalie situation. He carried the puck to the red line, and you're like, we feel better with Mike Smith. And so he scores the goal against San Jose, and it was a no-doubter. Like, he was that good. So another one of those great moments. I love you too, Derek Montilla. Is he back in town?
No, he's
still in Texas?
Yeah, and then they're going to Chicago.
Where's our budget? Like, we're here?
I went to Australia. You could have come.
I didn't go to Australia. Derek's in Dallas. And did you see where they got to shoot their show from?
Yeah.
The hell have the ballpark in the background?
Yep.
He got to go to all those fun things. By the way, fun thing, that home run derby. Ooh.
I didn't watch.
Oh, Jose. Enough. If you know, you know. And it's a 2-hour TV event that turned into a 3-hour TV event.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, Derek, welcome aboard. But Mike Smith made some of those unbelievable moments memorable.
All right, I'm going to go more recent. And we're
Okay.
going to start getting into the best of the best. And then at the end, we'll rank. So we
Cool.
can discuss even the best ones. A lot of this has to do with recency bias. I'm going to throw out a non-Coyotes game.
Ooh.
I'm going to go to October 14th, 2022.
That
The
seems new.
first ASU hockey game at Mullett Arena.
Okay.
The first game ever played at Mullett Arena, in
Okay.
fact. We were there. A lot of the diehards were there. That was our takeover, as we mentioned earlier.
Another takeover.
Josh Doan scores the first goal in Mullett Arena history, and ASU shut out Colgate 2-0 to win the first ever game at Mullett Arena. What a special night.
And again, diehards were there.
Mm-hmm.
We were there live, and you just felt it. You just felt something special was going to happen that night. And again, the kid, in his entire career, it's just a storybook. Josh Doan writes the story, and that was the story. Like, what did we want to see? Oh, we wanted to see this, who's going to get the first goal in the history of the Mullett? And
Josh
it
Doan.
had to be a Doan.
It had to be a Doan.
And it was a Doan.
Yep.
Unbelievable moment. Great game. Fantastic hockey
Yeah.
game.
So that's one of my favorites of all time, and we'll stick with the Josh Doan storyline. This one was extremely recent. March 26, 2024. Josh Doan, called up from Tucson, makes his NHL debut against the Columbus Blue Jackets, becomes the first player born and trained in Arizona to play for the Coyotes. He scores not one, but 2 goals in his NHL debut, and the Coyotes win 6-2. That game almost helps me ease some of the pain that came later because of how special that game was. And the fact that we got to be there and
We're
live
there
that.
again.
Yep.
We were there again for that moment. And that one's when you go back to that one, Leah, it was like we were just thrilled that he got called up and he got to get a chance to play in the NHL this season. I don't want to say it was a gift or a token. It was like he had earned it. He was leading the team down in Tucson, but also going into that, remember that it was, he's going to come up for 2 games.
Yeah.
Be for 2 games. But he lit it up, and there was just something special about him being on the ice. The puck came to him, and one thing I'll say about Josh Doan is he knows how to play hockey. He doesn't make mistakes. He's cerebral, high hockey IQ, and he does the right thing when he's on the ice, and it showed in that game. And once he's in the lineup, you can't take him out. And the puck just came to him. Again, for him to get that goal, that arena, every time he had the puck inside the blue line, the whole arena started to get like this. And when he scored, it's one of those moments inside the Mullett where the roof blew off. It was just amazing.
It was one, like, that is a game that for the rest of my life I will never forget. And it was a Tuesday against Columbus. And the hilarious part of it was that it was originally going to be an ESPN game, which we all were laughing. Why would they choose this? ESPN dropped the game because, I mean, they thought the same thing as everyone else. Columbus, Arizona, Tuesday in March. No thanks. Ended up being one of the best games of the
Unbelievable
season.
game. Unbelievable hockey game. Fun to be there. And again, one of those meaningful cornerstone moments for this franchise. And there, because of the people involved and with Josh Doan, it became another Shane Doan night, like Shane Doan getting interviewed. Remember the pictures and the shots of Shane and Andrea and the family up in the
and
press
his
box.
uncle ripping his shirt off.
Like it was all of those moments. It's because we felt like we're all a part of it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to get the downturn, but it's so sad that we've lost all of that because that night showed the importance of that family to not just the organization, but the hockey community here in Arizona as a whole. And I do hope, and I still believe, I'll put my 2 cents in here, I still believe that's not the last we have heard with the Doan family and hockey in Arizona. And I'll just leave it with that.
Well, I'll stick on the bittersweet because another one on my list was the final Coyotes game, April 17th, 2024. We were there as well. A lot of diehards were there. A lot of people watched on TV from all over. People flew in from all over. Coyotes win 5-2 over Edmonton, but that was one where the play on the ice helped kind of secure that how special that night was all around. The players understood the assignment. One of the most special hockey games I've ever been to in my whole life.
It was different though, because I think we had been doing shows, so many shows leading up to that game that we kind of had an opportunity to purge some of that negative feelings. And I think we were almost numb to it that night, but it was a lot of the fans' first experience of being in that group together, experiencing it. I hope this makes sense because what we saw, we were the shoulder to cry on literally that night. And I think there were so many people in the stands that emotionally were invested in this team and this franchise. And that was a really, really hard night. And this is an Edmonton Oilers team that made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And Connor McDavid was in the lineup that night. And you think, oh, this could be trouble. But to your point, the team understood the assignment. And right away, Liam O'Brien,
of all people,
scores a goal, and it just felt different. And I think even the Oilers were kind of like, oh my, this is different. And it really was. The whole night just felt different. And there were so many emotions that night. And to see what happened afterwards on the ice and how the team appreciated their equipment manager, Stan Wilson, and how the players didn't want to leave the ice. And all of those emotions really encapsulated the whole us against the world mentality that this franchise has had from the beginning. And I think that's why that game is so important in the history of the franchise. Yeah,
absolutely. I'll give out one more. If you want to give out more, then we can rank. But This one, we've been dancing around it. This might be my number one, if not top 3 for me. May 7th, 2012. Coyotes defeat the Nashville Predators 2-1 at Jobbing.com Arena to advance to the Western Conference Final for the first time in franchise history. I was there at that game. If you're watching this on YouTube, the thumbnail photo is from that game.
Wow.
And that's a game I think of when people think, oh, there's no fans in Arizona. When I think of everyone donning white, waving the white towels, the energy in that building that night, not only was it one of the best feelings in a building I've ever had, but that was like the Coyotes had arrived on the national stage. Like, there's 4 teams in the conference finals and the Coyotes were one. And for them to get to that point, when you make it that far, you think, oh my God, they could win the Stanley Cup. And if it wasn't for LA, they could have. But
I'll be honest, because they're in the same division. The LA Kings are in the same division as the Coyotes in the Pacific. The Coyotes win the Pacific Division. LA gets in the last game of the year. Coyotes had success against LA Kings all regular season long. And the feeling inside the room after they beat the Nashville Predators, this team's going to the Stanley Cup. It just was. The feeling was there. But that, if you go back and remember the LA Kings that year, they were a powerhouse. Like the most physical team I've ever seen in the history of hockey was that year of the LA Kings. They rolled through teams and did just too much for Arizona. But Nashville, with that series, had so many things. You look at Radulov getting suspended from staying out too late in Scottsdale. Thank you, Old Town. He got caught by an ESPN reporter out at 4 a.m. the night before a game, and the team struggled, didn't know what to do. They suspended him for the game, and the Coyotes win the game. The Coyotes ended up winning that series 4-1. I thought the Coyotes were a much better team. I thought it was a really good matchup getting the Nashville Predators, and that game It was a 1-goal game, and the face-off, pulled goalie, face-off in front of Mike Smith with a pulled goalie, and the face-off came back to Mike Smith. And when you have a 1-goal lead, Leah, you're supposed to get the puck out over the blue line, and just get the puck over the blue line. Mike Smith shot for the empty net and missed. Icing. Face-off comes back, and we were like, "Oh my God, you didn't just do that! Like you can't give the Nashville Predators an opportunity to get another shot. Just get it out over the blue line, and then the game would have been over." Luckily, then the Coyotes won the draw, and it was all over. But that moment when you sit there and go, "Oh my gosh, this team's going to the Western Conference Finals," and it just felt special, and I believed that the train was going to keep rolling, and it was by far the most fun I've ever had. Best work experience, best hockey experience was that 2012 playoff run.
Before we do our ranking, are there any games that we have not talked about that are on your list that I want to acknowledge? And again, if you're here live in the chat, throw your suggestions in.
I think when most of those games in 2012 had important moments, but I think there's so many of the things. I know we talked about the Chris Kalanos thing. I look at the individual outcomes and individual players' performances as being important. Like I remember Kyle Chipchura getting a goal in Chicago in that Game 5, and that moment to me was this is every game had gone to overtime, and that game finally you could see wasn't, and it was the fourth line. It was Gilbert Brûlé, and it was the Kyle Chipchuras and Damon Lenkow. It was those guys that got that team over the hump, and that was one of those moments that was really important for this franchise. You talk about the overtime goals for Bodker. I think it's those moments that I remember that you go, oh my gosh, that player did something very, very special. And I don't know, again, if they're team things, but they're more of those individual moments that I'm glad I got to be a part of.
Yeah, Charles said, I think Paul mentioned it earlier, but 2010 against Detroit and the first whiteout in Glendale. And Connor said Josh Doan's first goal. Favorite moment as well. That
2012 playoffs was tough. That's Zetterberg, and that's when they were at their best. And that's Brizgalov in 2010. Yeah, that was Brizgalov, and that was
the peak of me hating Detroit because they kept getting them in the first round.
And it's funny because again, we're going to tie that right back to Shane Doan again. I believe, and we can rewrite history, and we've talked to anybody on that team will tell you the same thing. Shane Doan gets hurts his shoulder. That's the best hockey Shane Doan has ever played in his life. That 2010 Detroit Red Wing playoff series, he was a beast. He was still young, and he was speed, and he was in front of that. He was fantastic, and it was a stupid play that he was going in to try to knock the puck out of Osgood's. Osgood had covered the puck. He was trying to get in, tripped on Osgood's stick, into the boards, shoulder injury, out for the rest of the series. I believe if Shane Doan doesn't get hurt in 2010, I believe the Coyotes beat the Detroit Red Wings. And it goes 7 games, and they just, once Doan got hurt, they just couldn't get back in.
Caleb makes a good point. How about the collective shutout streaks for the goalies?
We didn't even talk about Brian Boucher.
Yeah.
The Brian Boucher and the Brian Boucher 5 consecutive shutout streaks. Again, the coaches were in trouble. It was like Wayne Gretzky's coaching, and just giving Sean Burke a break, like a 1-game break, gets a shutout, can't take him out. Actually, it wasn't. It was Bobby Francis was coaching. Wayne was part ownership, and you couldn't take him out. Next game comes, he gets another shutout. We're on the road, and Berkey's like, "Hey, buddy, I want to play." Couldn't, and that team sucked. Sorry, Boosh, the team sucked. Like it was bad. That was our playoffs. And you just got, oh my God, he can't do it again, Kenny. Like he can't do it 3 in a row. Like he can't get 3 in a row. We go to Carolina, he gets another one. And this team's like, we go to Washington, gets another one. We get into Minnesota after 4 consecutive shutouts, and we're going to Minnesota, another good team. And I'm so glad he set the record in Minnesota because Minnesota fans understood. They understood that this is a big deal, and every shot was oohs and ahs. Like I'm not kidding.
That's crazy.
We had Coyotes players in January blocking shots. Like you should have seen it. It gives me chills thinking about how hard those players worked for that moment, and it was unbelievable. I have Brian Boucher signed the game sheets, and I've still got those at home.
That's cool.
And I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I've still got them in a drawer somewhere. But that moment, 5 consecutive shutouts for a team that was so far out of the playoffs. And that's when, right when that streak ended, they trade Sean Burke at the trade deadline. The team goes 1-22 to finish the season. It was a bad hockey team. They fired Bobby Francis. It was unbelievable. And that streak, again, it shows what sports are. Team sucked and they lost, but everybody bound together for that one moment for the common cause. It was to get this goaltender a shutout. I'm sitting here saying today, I don't think that record will be broken in my lifetime. I think there's too much goal scoring in this league today. I think it's too hard for a goaltender to do that, to get 5 consecutive shutouts. And it would have continued. We played the Atlanta Thrashers at home, and the first period, a shot. The defenseman was David Tanabe. Oh, David. David was in front of the net, facing the wall. The shot was from the point. He didn't see the shot. The shot hit him in the back and went in.
That's a bummer.
Hit our own defenseman in the back and went in, and that was the end of the shutout streak in the first period against the Atlanta Thrashers, which wasn't a very good team at the time. So thanks for bringing that up. The goal thing, that was fantastic.
Yeah, that was great. And you have a crazy good memory, by the way.
Because I lived it.
I know.
And just I remember the feeling in the locker room. Like you couldn't get over the excitement for what was happening for him. And the part of the net is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. They cut the net out in Minnesota. Awesome. Like it's a big thing. And we came out with posters by the end of the season that said "Boosh," and it was 5-0.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very cool. I think my son still has that in his room.
Michael brought up the Mike Smith goal.
Yep.
James brought up Roenick coming back in Game 7 with the broken jaw. All things we talked about. Paul brings up beating Jets 2.0 in the first ever matchup on October 15th, 2011. 4-1 win.
Look at Paul.
It was the season opener. That's a good one, Paul. Very honorable mention, I would say.
Yeah.
I think
a lot of important games between those two teams.
Yeah.
And it was a tough matchup when the Coyotes went into Winnipeg. Never won there. And when I mean never, I mean never. You have to go look up the consecutive years. They finally did win a game under Bear. Was the first time they had won. Was the shutout. Was the first time they won
the
there.
Veggie shutout.
In the 2.0. Winnipeg 2.0. Dave Tippett and Rick Tocchet never won in that building. And it was incredibly hard. And the one thing I remember most about playing in Winnipeg is something that to this day I still struggled with. Blake Wheeler played for that team and was the captain at that time. And the captain of the Coyotes was Shane Doan. And every time Shane Doan touched the puck, he got booed. Every time for the entirety of his career when he returned. Because he was part of the original group and he touched the puck and they booed him.
It'd be interesting to see
and it was just wrong.
If the Coyotes 2.0 happened and then Utah played, what the reaction would be. That could be something we talk about later down the line. Hopefully when that's a realistic possibility.
Yeah.
I think
I agree with Connor too. Can we put Connor's comment up?
Connor said it's refreshing to have a show focused solely on the Yotes again. No post games or watch parties this year is going to leave such a void. And right when I moved here, thanks for that comment, Connor. This feels nice. And actually, we have tons of ideas. We want to do watch-alongs or post-game shows for old Coyotes games.
Yep.
There's so much stuff that we can do, so much fun that we can have.
And there's still a lot of people here in the Valley that have a lot of close ties to that team. We have a lot of alumni, very large alumni presence, and we're going to bring that group together and bring them down here and talk about some of these moments through their eyes.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's going to give us. We're going to keep our connection to our team.
Yep,
that's just the reality. We've got the people here to help do it. So we're here. We're here. We're talking hockey, talking Arizona hockey.
It feels good. It
does feel good. And I still believe, I've said it, I said it was only say it once, there will be another NHL hockey team in Arizona. There will be.
Yep.
Heard it here, maybe not first, but you've heard it here.
We're manifesting.
We're manifesting. Get it out there. Positive thoughts.
That's what I said. I've said it on the show.
Yes.
You need to speak it out loud. If we all speak it out loud, it'll happen. Next up, we're going to rank our top 5. So start thinking.
Yes.
Everybody start thinking. I want people to contribute to this. But first things first, we want you to become a PHNX diehard. As I mentioned, diehards get 20% off merch, events, access to our Discord. We also do Discord hangouts. We do exclusive diehard meetups. So just so many great reasons to become a diehard. And even though there's no Coyotes, we are still a great community, and we want you to be part of that community by becoming a diehard today. Go phnx.com/diehard. And we want to see everybody out there in about 10 days, actually 10 days exactly, for our first ever PHNX pickleball tournament at Chicken and Pickle out in Glendale, Saturday the 27th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. All proceeds go to the State 48 Veterans Association. So it's going to be a blast indoor, so nice and cool. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, expert, there's a game for you, food and drink specials. The PHNX crew is going to be out there. It's going to be a blast. So we want to see you.
And it's not too early to drink because it's an official sporting event.
I agree.
So 9 a.m. is not too early. And that's why you have WOW. And they do have WOW on tap.
They do.
And that's got orange in it. So it's
basically
very
orange
breakfasty.
Juice.
Exactly. Very breakfasty.
All right. It's time for us to come to an agreement, and we're only going to do 5.
Okay.
Top 5.
Okay. Do you want a list?
Do you want to go? No, we're going to discuss. Do you want to go 1 to 5 or 5 to 1?
Well, 5 to 1.
Okay.
It's a countdown. 6.
Okay.
Casey Kasem.
What do you like?
I had Josh Doan scores 2 goals in his Coyote debut, coming in at number 5 because of built this hockey community together, tied the old Doan to the new Doan.
I like that.
I have that coming in at the number 5 biggest game in the history of this franchise.
Okay. I like it. I'll go with it. Yeah. I'm in. I wanted that game to make the list. That was one of my ones that I felt strongly
And another
about.
one coming in at 4, I have 4, is Shane Doan's hat trick again, because I think Shane Doan personally did so much for this organization, kept the team here for a very long time. I think it's important that he is recognized individually for a team effort, and you can't just give him one moment. There were 3 moments throughout that game, which made the game important. I go to Shane Doan's hat trick on January 7th, 2012, coming in at number 4.
All right. Listen, I'm not going to argue with you on this.
I think this is because I was there. I think this might be the existential list. Number 3, April 17th, 2024, the final game for the Arizona Coyotes franchise, coming in at number 3 in a big 5-2 win over Edmonton, an emotional night for all of us, coming in at number 3 in the history of the franchise.
You know what? I see your list because your computer's right there, and I agree. So just take it home.
So number 2, coming in at number 2, May 7th, 2012, the Coyotes defeat the Nashville Predators 2-1 at Jobbing.com Arena to advance to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history.
I'm sure a lot of people had that number 1. So what is number 1 that was better than that?
The number 1 game, unfortunately, did not happen in the state of Arizona for me. The number 1 game in Arizona Coyotes history that I was a part of and saw personally and felt the energy was April 23rd, 2012. The Coyotes defeat the Chicago Blackhawks at United Center 4-0 to record their first playoff series win in the history of an NHL team in Arizona in a 6-game thriller. Unbelievable moment where this franchise finally broke through that first round curse, that first round, that barrier that kept them the entire time they were here. And I think it was an important moment to beat a team that had just come off the Stanley Cup wins a few years earlier. And that to me was the most important game, the biggest game, and the best game in Coyotes history.
I like it. Charles brings up beating Nashville in the bubble in 2020.
Yeah, it's funny we didn't talk about the bubble. And it's weird because the bubble games were so bizarre. It was almost like surreal. I think beating Nashville in the bubble was big, but because sports felt different then, there wasn't the crowd, there wasn't the camaraderie, it just hit different. Mm-hmm. I didn't put the bubble games into my top 10. Yeah. I think that was a big win.
Yeah.
I think beating Nashville again, which was a higher seeded team, I think it was good. But the reality of those 2020 bubble games, Coyotes finished 11th. They shouldn't have been there. I mean, in a normal year, there's no way they're going to make that. So I agree, Charles, that beating Nashville in the bubble was really cool. And I got to have my biggest challenge ever was in that game where I got to call Kyle Turris' goal off. That would have changed the series. That was kind of my personal top game.
Well, let us know if you agree or disagree with our top 5. To recap, number 5, Josh Doan's NHL debut in which he scored 2 goals. Number 4 was, which one was number 4?
Number 4 was Shane Doan hat trick
on January 7th against the Islanders. Number 3, the final Coyotes game for now. The final Coyotes 1.0 game. How about that? Yep. On April 17, 2024. Number 2, May 7th, 2012. Coyotes defeat Nashville to go to the Western Conference Final. And number 1, April 23rd, 2012. The Coyotes defeat Chicago to win the first round for the first time ever. So that's our list. This is since hockey didn't of the 25 greatest games in Arizona sports history, hockey didn't get as much love on the list. It's fine. We're gonna give.
That's what we're here for.
We're giving love today on this show. PHNX Ranks, the PHNX Hockey Edition. So we're gonna give some love, and we do have the list for everybody to see as well. So our
the
final
magic
list,
behind the mat makes it happen.
So here it is. We'll tweet this out later too. So we want people to comment on our Twitter at PHNX_hockey. If your list is the same, different, slightly different, a lot different, let us know in our Discord as well. Let's have a conversation. I have to say, this kind of felt like a cleansing show.
It felt really good. This was fun.
This felt great. I'm really glad once again that I wore my Coyotes Forever shirt. It felt appropriate for today. Pete, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I just felt good to talk about hockey in the
did.
state of Arizona again. I think that every once in a while we need to balance and ground ourselves back to what brought us all here together.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a dark time. It's been a tough time. There's been a lot of crazy news and ups and downs and downs and downs and downs. But sometimes it feels nice to reminisce. And that's what PHNX Ranks Week brought us. So that's great. We want you to let your opinions be known as the rankings come out on the PHNX Sports Twitter and Instagram later today. As I mentioned, you can also read the full list with in-depth reasonings for each game on our website right now, gophnx.com. So check that out as well. But yeah, it just felt good to take a trip down memory lane. Like Charles said, we needed a boost like this today. We did. So this felt really good. And thank you all so much for being here in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. If you're listening on audio, leave us a 5-star review. We have a special guest on Friday's audio-only episode. ASU's newest assistant coach, Mike Corbett, joins us.
It's a fun interview.
Yeah, great interview.
Good guy.
So
excited about
yeah, if you want to get ready for ASU hockey, take a listen to that on Friday. It's gonna be it's a good one, and it really got me in the mood for ASU hockey down the road. So lots to look forward to. We're gonna keep it positive. Positive P.
Positive P. That's me.
Today.
Everybody knows me. I'm positive to my core. Never negative.
Oh boy. Well,
Let's
everybody,
go.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts. And we'll see you all on Friday for our audio episode. You can follow us on Twitter at @SPetersHockey, at Leah Merrill, at Abracadanielle. Follow the show at PHNX_hockey. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
We all silly like the mayor.